everybody, welcome to the Mana Leek. I'm Jonna as always, and we're starting to wind down now. This is the second last set review. We're going to go over all of the gold cards. Sometimes I combine the gold and artifact and lands into one, but that would have been way too long of a video. So this one's going to be a little bit shorter, about 7 or 8 cards shorter than the last ones. And then tomorrow we'll wrap up with all of the artifacts and all of the lands. And there's a number of them. So yeah, let's jump on into the first card. Up first is Bloodwater Entity. Bloodwater Entity is 1 blue-red for a creature elemental at uncommon. It's a 2/2. It has flying. It has prowess. When Bloodwater Entity enters the battlefield, you may put target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard on top of your library. So it's a 2/2 flyer with prowess for 3. Totally fine. Totally and utterly fine. Getting back your best burn, removal, bounce, whatever spell you've already used, totally nice. A little bit slow because it goes on top of your library, but not too big of a deal. Obviously, this goes way down if you're somehow blue-red and not with a whole bunch of spells. But even then, if you're blue-red kind of aggro, a 2/2 flyer with prowess for 3 is still going to be totally fine. Just seems like an easy B- to me. I don't think I would pick it and say, aha, I know what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go blue-red. I would prefer to be in one of those colors before I pick this up. So I don't think it's in the kind of upper echelon of gold cards, but still pretty darn good. The Locust God is up next. The Locust God is 4 blue-red for a legendary creature god at Mythic. It's a 4/4 with flying. Whenever you draw a card, create a 1/1 blue and red insect creature token with flying and haste. Remember, you draw a card every turn. If that's not enough for you, you can pay 2 blue-red to draw a card, then discard a card. You get to loot. And when the Locust God dies, return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. This just seems super good. It is a vanilla 4/4 flyer for 6. When it comes down, that has an activated ability and a triggered ability. But every turn you're pumping out 1/1 hasty flyers at a minimum of 1 a turn. Plus getting able to sink your mana into loot to make another one, plus get your card selection. This just seems like an amazing 6 mana 4/4 flyer. And if it dies, you just get to replay it next turn. Easy snap first pick, seems insane. I think I'm going to give it a solid A, not quite an A+, just because I want to save that for the other 2 gods. But we've got some other stuff before we get to them. Up first is Bolus God Pharaoh. Bolus God Pharaoh is a Planeswalker Bolus at Mythic for 4 blue, red, black. He starts with 7 loyalty, and for +2, target opponent exiles cards from the top of his or her library until he or she exiles a non-land card. Until end of turn, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. His +1 is each opponent exiles 2 cards from his or her hand. His -4, Bolus God Pharaoh deals 7 damage to target opponent or creature an opponent controls, and -12, exile each non-land permanent your opponents control. That's a whole hell of a lot of stuff. Yeah, Bolus is absolutely amazing, and if you're at anything below like a Grand Prix level or PTQ draft, you're just taking this and trying it. I know I am every single time. Realistically, it's 7 mana in 3 colors, and that's going to be rough beyond rough to pull off. But the abilities that you get for jumping through those hoops and surviving that long are insane. Ripping cards off your opponent's deck and playing one for free is great, and guaranteed you're not hitting a land off of this. If you do, you just keep going, so you are going to hit something. Taking 2 cards from your opponent's hand is great, dealing 7 to their face or killing probably any creature you want, and if you get to 12, just saying I win basically is amazing. Realistically, you probably shouldn't be trying to play this if you're being like super duper competitive, but there's 0 chance that you nor I am going to try this every single chance we get. So A+, really, it's more kind of like a B-, and you have to be a little bit of a luck sack with your mana base and surviving long enough. Obelisk Spider is up next. Obelisk Spider is 1 black-green for a creature spider at uncommon. It's a 1/4 with reach, as most spiders have. Whenever Obelisk Spider deals combat damage to a creature, put a -1/-1 counter on that creature. So it has kind of like Wither. Whenever you put 1 or more -1/-1 counters on a creature, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. A 1/4 reach without Death Touch isn't that great. Giant Spider with 2 often picks flyers out of the air. 1 is not going to pick them out that much. However, it does hit kind of like a 2/4 because of that Wither type ability. Deals 1, also puts a -1/-1 counter on it. In addition, you're going to get some life drain. A very solid include in basically every black-green deck, even though I think the -1/-1 counter archetype is going to get hurt a little bit by the small set syndrome. I'm not picking it too highly, but once I'm in one of these colors, why not? Seems like a solid B-. Resolute Survivors are up next. Resolute Survivors are 1 red-white for a creature human warrior at uncommon. It's a 3/3. You may exert it as it attacks. Whenever you exert a creature, Resolute Survivors deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain 1 life. It's a 3/3 for 3, which is fine. I'll 100% play it if I'm in red-white. I'm getting to drain my opponent for 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, who knows. Plus whatever other exert effects I'm getting seems really nice. It's just a solid tool for red-white. Probably not first pickable, but again, once you're in one of these colors, it's a good thing to start taking and going down that path. And yeah, this is going to make sure that red-white exert is very much still an archetype. So solid B for Resolute Survivors. River Hoopoe is up next, and Hoopoe is a real bird. They're not quite as colorful as this, but yeah, always fun getting to see some real obscure wildlife on Magic cards. River Hoopoe is green-blue for a creature bird at uncommon. It's a 1/3 with flying. Pay 3 green-blue. You gain 2 life, and you draw a card. I've been wishing that we'd get back to having mana sinks, and this is a pretty good one. 5 mana is certainly a lot of mana to pay for it. Gaining 2 life and drawing a card, though, is a nice way to spend 5 mana that I'd otherwise waste by not having anything to do with it. This is probably going to be better than this silly-looking bird seems like at first glance. Never underestimate things to spend your mana on. They're real good. The lack of them in the last 3 sets has really been one of the major reasons that, drawing like 1 too many lands has just been a death sentence. This will help fix that. I'm going to start potentially generously at this at a B-. Again, not first pickable, but once I'm in one of these colors, it might lead me down the green-blue path. Our other Planeswalker is up next, Samet the Tested. Samet the Tested is 2 red-green for a Planeswalker Samet at Mythic. She's a 4 loyalty Planeswalker to start. Her +1 is up to 1 target creature gains double strike until end of turn. Her -2, Samet the Tested, deals 2 damage divided as you choose among 1 or 2 target creatures and or players. Her -7, search your library for up to 2 creature and or Planeswalker cards, put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Samet's fine. She's a totally fine limited Planeswalker, but she's not, spectacular. She's kind of like your typical red-green Planeswalker. She's very balanced, doesn't break the game, but is going to give you some solid value. Double striking a creature is certainly going to be something, especially if it's a beefy green trampler. It's not amazing, and it may just do nothing if you still can't profitably attack. Twin bolting is cool and all, though 2 loyalty is a solid price to pay for it. If you do get to 7, which is a 3 or 4 turn endeavor, then getting your 2 best creatures for free is going to be a game swinging, but you're looking at quite a slog to get there, and hopefully you haven't already drawn those cards that are going to win the game for you and are stranded in your hand. Ultimately, she's fine. I'm first picking her if I see her at most, sort of casual-ish level events below GPs and such. She's not as weak as, say, Saheeli was in Limited, but I think she is probably just like a B, maybe a B+ Planeswalker. Not amazing, but fine. Alright, back to the gods. The Scarab God is up next. The Scarab God is 3 blue-black for a legendary creature god at Mythic. It's a 5/5. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life, and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. For 2 blue X, exile target creature card from a graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. You get to eternalize any creature. When the Scarab God dies, return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. Yeah, the Scarab God seems ridiculous. Unfortunately, blue-black zombies is not really... There's 1 common eternalized blue creature and 1 uncommon blue eternalized creature, and then there's, a few embalm sitting in your 3rd pack, but blue is not going to load you up on zombies. Black, of course, is very definitely going to load you up on zombies. The upside, of course, being that it's only 4 mana to eternalize whatever you want. Doesn't matter if it's an eternalize or embalm creature, you're getting it back. That Shimmerscale Drake that you cycled, it's now a zombie, which is going to help the Scarab God just get even better. Yeah, The only slight knock I can give against this is that blue doesn't have that many or any actual natural zombies. But that knock is still basically nothing. This card is just incredible. The value you're going to get out of this, both in the scrying and the life loss and the bringing creatures back as 4/4s and just, everything. A+. Easy, easy, easy A+. The third god is the Scorpion God. The Scorpion God is 3 black-red for a legendary creature god at Mythic. It's a 6/5 for 5. Whenever a creature with a -1/-1 counter on it dies, draw a card. Pay 1 black-red, put a -1/-1 counter on another target creature. When the Scorpion God dies, return it to his owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. Yeah, Scorpion God seems amazing as well. I think I probably like it the best, ever so slightly ahead of the Scarab God. It's a 6/5 for 5, so it beats the vanilla test there. Then next turn, if you hit a land, you get to drop 2 -1/-1 counters, maybe draw a card or 2 if you're picking off little creatures. That's just an absolute very serious beating. Plus black-red has an awful lot of ways to put counters on things. This combined with a lucky Merciless Javelineer in pack 3 is going to feel great. Yeah, the Scorpion God's amazing. A+. Easy, solid A+. Our final non-Aftermath gold card is Unraveling Mummy. Unraveling Mummy is 1 white-black for a creature zombie at uncommon. It's a 2/3. Pay 1 and a white, target attacking zombie gains lifelink until end of turn. Pay 1 and a black, target attacking zombie gains death touch until end of turn. Luckily, zombies doesn't seem to have been a deck that's been really hit by small set syndrome. There's still a serious number below rare in black, a number in white, and this will be a great include for that deck. If you're lacking on zombies, this goes down a bit, but it can still even hit itself, meaning that it is still, at worst, a death toucher to block whatever for just 2 mana, or a lifelinker to gain a little bit of value there. If I was somehow in a black-white not zombie deck, I still would 100% of the time play this. It's a pretty high pick early on to go into the zombies deck. I've got this at just a straight up solid B. Our first Aftermath card is Farm to Market. Farm is 2 and a white for an instant and uncommon. Destroy target attacking or blocking creature. Market is a sorcery. Draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. This is fine enough, and really 2 utterly separate cards. 3 mana for this effect is nice. It's 1 less than Divine Verdict, which was totally playable. The second half of the card is less good. You ideally need to have 2 cards in your hand already, though if you're getting desperate, you can cast it on 1 and still be okay. Sorcery speed also hurts it a little bit, but luckily Farm is completely and utterly playable. I would play this in most of my white decks, regardless of what my other color was, and it's just a cool bonus if I happen to be blue and need to use my mana up in some way later in the game. So B- for Farm to Market. Consign to Oblivion is the blue-black one at uncommon. Consign is 1 and a blue for an instant at uncommon. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Oblivion is 4 and a black for a sorcery. Target opponent discards 2 cards. We have Unsummon in this set. We don't need a 2 mana bounce spell. This one does, of course, hit non-land permanent, but come on, you're going to hit a creature 95% of the time or more. But yeah, I'll still play it. 2 mana bounce is what I've gotten used to, so I will still certainly play this in, again, probably just every single blue deck that I have. Oblivion, again, is really overcosted for what it is. It's a massively expensive mind rot. Typically we pay 3 mana for this, not 5 mana, but again, it's stapled to a card that I'm playing regardless, and so it's just upside. If I have a turn where I have 5 mana and I'm gonna do nothing with it, sure, I'll cast Oblivion. But Consign is the real part of the card here, just like Farm was the real part of the Farm to Market card. So I've got this one at a B- as well. That's probably slightly my bias for bounce stuff. It's maybe more a C+, but I like bounce. I love bounce. B-. Claim to Fame is up next. Claim is a single black mana for a sorcery at uncommon. Return target creature with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Fame is 1 and a red for a sorcery. Target creature gets +2/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. I've gone back and forth on this a few times. Ultimately, I think I do like Claim. I do really like Graveyard to Battlefield. That effect is an effect that I really, really like. Getting back a 2 or 1 drop, not great, but it only costs a single mana. And in a game of Limited, you're probably going to have 2 or 1 drops in your graveyard a little bit later in the game, and this is not amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but it is 1 mana for your best 2-drop that previously died. So there's a decent discount there, plus you're getting that creature back again. Like the last 3 cards, I really couldn't care less about Fame. It's a pump spell at sorcery speed, and it gives a creature haste. You know, haste can definitely be surprising, but boy do I hate spending real mana on it. So again, Fame is just not why I'm playing this card. It's just a cool bonus if I'm black-red. Claim, I think I will play in my somewhat more aggressive decks, which makes sense with this being black-red. If I was blue-black control, something with the later game, something where a 2-drop on turn 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 is just not part of my plan, then I don't really care about getting a single mana discount. So I've got this at a C. I'm going to keep a very close eye on it, but I think it does fit into specific decks only. Struggle to Survive is up next. Struggle is 2 and a red for an instant uncommon. Struggle deals damage to target creature equal to the number of land you control. Survive is 1 and a green. Each player shuffles his or her graveyard into his or her library. Yet again, I really like Struggle. I could not care less about Survive. Struggle is just, it's open fire, first off, which I already talked about loving. It's open fire if you cast this on turn 3 with 3 lands. Later in the game, it's way better than open fire. It's 3 mana for 4 damage, or 5 damage, or 6 damage, or things went really terrible and now it's 10 damage and somehow you're still alive. Yeah, Struggle is just absolutely amazing and first pickable in a number of packs. Survive is garbage. Like, it's just, no. Sure, you get your cards back into your library and maybe get to draw them again, but so does your opponent. It's just, no. I'm never casting Survive, ever. I'm going to cast Struggle every single time I possibly can. So Struggle is a B+, and apparently it has another card attached to it, which doesn't matter. Appeal to Authority is the last of the uncommon of these that we have. Appeal is a single green mana for a sorcery at uncommon. Until end of turn, target creature gains trample and gets +X/+X, where X is the number of creatures you control. Authority is 1 and a white for a sorcery. Tap up to 2 target creatures your opponents control. Creatures you control gain vigilance until end of turn. This seems decent enough in a green-white go-wide strategy, and shockingly, both halves fit very well into that strategy. Making 1 creature gigantic and trample is very nice, and then for just 3 mana total, tapping their 2 best blockers as well is awesome and should end a lot of games. I don't think I'd play this in other green decks unless the plan was still definitely to go wide. If I'm not quite certain that I'm going to get more than +2/+2 off of this, I don't really want to play Appeal in my deck. I'll cut it unless I absolutely need a 23rd card or something. But in those go wide decks, this is going to be a fantastic card and potentially end games. So I'm going to go with a C+ on it. I don't think you play this in just any deck, though. I think you need to be go wide. Alright, that's all for uncommons. We have 5 rare Aftermath cards left. Up first is Leave to Chance. Leave is 1 and a white for an instant at rare. Return any number of target permanents you own to your hand. Chance is 3 and a red for a sorcery. Discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards. I really don't care for this card. Leave seems miserable. I play a lot of bounce. I've bounced my own creatures before, and it is an absolute desperation play, and it never feels good. It means that I am on the back foot by far. Getting to bounce several of my creatures is not really part of my plan either. Flicker, sure. Having to recast them, not part of the plan. I will be very happy to sideboard this in if in game 1 or in game 2, and we're going to game 3, I happen to see my opponent play Hour of Devastation, or the White Wrath, or Sweltering Suns, or something like that. In that case, this card becomes really good, but you need to see that before you put this into your main deck. Chance, couldn't really care less. I'm not a fan of, kind of Tormenting Voice and whatnot, usually, unless it's really kind of building into some sort of synergy aspect of the deck. Paying 4 mana and getting to discard any number of cards, yeah. I don't want to spend that much mana at sorcery speed to do that. So I'm at a D on this. I think you only play this card if you've already seen a Wrath. Reason to Believe is up next. Reason is a single blue mana for a sorcery at rare, scry 3. End of rules text on the card. Believe is 4 and a green for a sorcery. Look at the top card of your library. You may put it onto the battlefield if it's a creature card. If you don't, put it into your hand. So the plan here, of course, is you pay blue, scry 3, put the most amazing creature you possibly can on top of your library, pay 4 and a green, and aha, you got it for free, is what everybody's saying, except you paid 6 mana. If you get a greater sandworm off of this, you saved yourself a whopping 1 mana. Ooh, you sure showed that, opponent. Yeah, this card just seems not at all something that I really want to do. You know, especially with Reason not even being instant speed, I don't even want to play that in a blue deck. If it was instant speed, I might. End of turn, I've got a blue kicking around. I get to, you know, figure out my next 3 turns or so. Sorcery speed, just no. I think this card's bad. I think it's a giant trap. You are not getting that creature for free. You are paying 6 mana and a card to get that creature for quote-unquote free. D-, I am out on Reason to Believe. Grind to Dust is the next one. Grind is 1 and a black for a sorcery at rare. Put a -1/-1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. So this is not Splendid Agony. You can't put them both on 1. Dust is 3 and a white for a sorcery. Exile any number of target creatures that have -1/-1 counters on them. This seems real good. It's kind of like Splendid Agony, but it's cheaper, slower, and narrower, which ultimately is kind of like the same, I guess, sort of. I think I probably like Splendid Agony a little bit more than I like Grind. I'd still play Grind if I was in a black deck, but, you know, I'd prefer Splendid Agony. But if you're black-white, you've got 4 black-white unconditional removal for 2 creatures, and that's real good. If you can finagle a 3rd or even a 4th out of the deal, then this is just incredible. This seems real good. I would very happily first pick it and say, well, looking at going black-white. Even if you can't do it in one go, I feel like the odds of your opponent doing something about those counters before you do Dust the next turn is just really low. So yeah, real good, easy first pick. I'm at a B+ on Grind to Dust. Refuse to Cooperate is our second last Aftermath card. Refuse is 3 and a red for an instant at rare. Refuse deals damage to target spell's controller equal to that spell's converted mana cost. Cooperate is 2 and a blue for an instant. Copy target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. This just seems bad. 4 mana to deal basically random amount of damage to your opponent. Luckily, you will know how much damage it's going to be before you cast it, but you don't actually have any control over when it's going to be 5 or when it's going to be 1, and this is just not for me. Sure, there will be amazing stories of you going, Sandworm Convergence, you say, take 8. But let's be real. This is a massive amount of the time going to be worse than a Lava Axe. And Lava Axe is pretty darn bad. There's no way I'm touching Refuse. I am refusing to touch Refuse. Cooperate is Fork from way back in the day, or recently we've seen Reverb or Rebound, and they never really do well in Limited, especially with this one requiring that you cast Refuse first. I think this card is just unplayable. And I'm probably just going to give it an F. Maybe it's like a D-, but no, I'm going to go with F. Alright, our final card for the gold set review is Driven to Despair. Driven is 1 and a green for a sorcery at rare. Until end of turn, creatures you control gain trample, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Despair is 1 and a black. Until end of turn, creatures you control gain menace, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this. Trample's cool and all, but without a buff, this just probably isn't good enough on the Driven side. Getting to draw cards feels a little bit win more if I know I'm getting through, and if I'm not getting through, then this is just a waste. I think you can play this if you want to, but I'm probably going to cut it more often than not as far as Driven is concerned. The black side, Menace, is really cool, and this is far more likely to just end the game. If you're black-green, this probably makes this all the way up to like a C+, maybe even a B-, but I do not think I would play Driven if I was in a green deck. But I'm going to keep a careful eye on this. This could be like Destined to Lead, where I was kind of like, it's okay, and then it turns out that it just demolishes games. Yeah. So we'll keep an eye on Driven to Despair. I'm going to start it at a C+ and see where it goes. Anyways, that's going to wrap it up for the gold set review. Let me know what you think of all the gold cards. Which ones are you excited to play with? There's obviously a large number of exciting cards here. Of course, talk with me, talk amongst yourselves about the ratings, about these cards, how you think they're going to work. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Etc. The comments are down below for you. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can find me on Twitter at TheManaLeek. That's L-E-E-K, like the vegetable, not the card. You can also find me at Facebook.com/TheManaLeek, Twitch.tv/TheManaLeek, and Patreon.com/TheManaLeek. As always, click that thumbs up button if you like the content. If you're new, click subscribe so that you can see when the rest of the set review goes up tomorrow, as well as all of the pre-release content, release content, etc. And if you do have questions, comments, or suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you all tomorrow to finish off the Hour of Devastation set review.